6 signs that you came to close cycles. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung once said, "Have you ever felt an invisible thread pulling you towards certain people, patterns, or pain that doesn't seem to be yours?" That's because some of us didn't just come here to live. We came to close cycles, to heal what others could not, and to end stories written long before us. In today's video, from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore 6 powerful signs that reveal whether your soul has chosen this sacred mission of completion and transformation. As you listen, reflect on your own life. Are you here to break generational chains or karmic loops? Let us know in the comments below which signs resonate with your journey. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay connected on your path of spiritual awakening. 1. Sacred discomfort with the old normal. You start to feel it like a quiet tremor beneath your daily routine, an unease that no longer lets you laugh at the jokes you once did, a sense of misalignment in conversations that used to feel normal. You're not angry. You're not broken. You're simply no longer available for the roles you used to play in silence. Carl Jung believed that transformation begins when the unconscious starts to rise into consciousness, not as an idea, but as a discomfort. And this is what's happening. The old normal doesn't feel safe anymore because your soul has matured beyond survival. You begin to see that emotional silence isn't strength, it's suppression. That sacrifice without truth isn't love, it's spiritual abandonment. And suddenly, every dinner table conversation that avoids the real issues feels like a betrayal of your own being. You're not imagining this shift. You're feeling the psychic weight of generations that taught you to swallow your truth, smile to keep the peace, and stay silent to earn belonging. But now, your soul is whispering something different. It's whispering, "This story ends with you." You're no longer able to stay numb to what your ancestors were forced to endure. You wake up and feel the ache of everything that was never healed. Jung would say, this is the moment the archetype of the wounded healer rises in you. You're being asked not to rebel, but to reconcile. Not to hate the past, but to bring it into the light. And that light begins as a subtle refusal. You stop laughing at the pain masked as humor. You stop apologizing for your sensitivity. And you stop betraying your body just to stay in rooms that make your soul feel small. It's not drama. It's depth. The soul doesn't scream. It withdraws. It doesn't rage. It becomes still. And in that stillness, everything becomes visible. The generational patterns, the unspoken grief, the conditioned roles that taught you love was something you earned by disappearing. You begin to crave intimacy that doesn't cost your peace. You start needing conversations where your nervous system doesn't brace for impact. And the things you used to chase, approval, validation, harmony at any cost, start to feel heavy and false. This is the spiritual sign that the cycle is closing. Your soul didn't incarnate to repeat trauma loops in prettier costumes. It came to unearth the root, to sit with it, to name it, and to no longer be afraid of what truth might cost. Because you've realized the real cost was never speaking it. The real betrayal was betraying yourself. And so you choose to pause before you respond. You breathe deeper when the old wound flares. You say no with love. And each small choice you make in alignment with your soul's truth becomes a sacred act of liberation, not just for you, but for every ancestor watching you do what they couldn't. Your discomfort is holy. It's the sign that your nervous system is detoxing from lifetimes of silence. It's your soul remembering that it didn't come to perform, it came to embody. You are not just healing yourself. You are collapsing timelines. You are freeing stories. And though the path may feel lonely at times, it is deeply guided. Because you are not here to be accepted by the old world. You are here to birth a new one through the power of your presence, through the courage to feel deeply, to speak honestly, and to love without self-erasure. And in that act of sacred discomfort, your soul completes what history left unfinished. 2. Emotional resonance with stories. You never lived. You've probably had moments where a story, a film, or even a few words from someone else stirred something so deep inside you that it felt like grief, but not yours. A sorrow without a source, a memory that doesn't belong to you, yet lives in you, as if passed down through the bloodstream. Carl Jung believed these moments are not coincidences or imagination gone wild. They are soul-level responses to psychic imprints buried in the collective unconscious, especially within our ancestral bloodlines. You didn't have to live the tragedy to carry its echo. Your soul is attuned to the unfinished emotional business of those who came before you. When you feel an ache for injustices you've never endured, when tears rise for stories you've never lived, it's not weakness. It's not a drama. It's not even purely empathy. It's a sacred inheritance, a spiritual appointment to bear witness, to feel what others could not express, and perhaps to begin the healing they never had the space or safety to do. Your sensitivity is not just your own. It's a signal that you've been called to close a cycle. Jung taught that what is not brought to consciousness comes to us as fate, and what many of us interpret as random emotional overwhelm may actually be soul work demanding our attention. Take, for instance, the story of a man who always felt inexplicably terrified of fire. He'd never been burned, never had an accident, and yet every time he passed by a bonfire or lit a match, his chest would tighten and anxiety would spike. It wasn't until he sat down with his grandmother one day that he learned their family home had burned to the ground generations ago, killing 2 small children. It was never spoken of again, but his body remembered. His soul remembered. Carl Jung would say this man had entered a symbolic confrontation with the forgotten he was being asked by life to acknowledge what had been repressed in his bloodline. Because when trauma is not healed, it is passed down, not only in DNA, but in dreams, fears, and sensitivities we can't explain. These psychic hand-me-downs become part of our soul's curriculum, and the emotional resonance we feel is the signal that we are standing at the edge of closure. This is why those who are highly sensitive often feel burdened or broken. But they're not. They are spiritually awake, often chosen to finish emotional stories left incomplete. When you experience this kind of unexplainable sadness or pain, don't push it away. Lean in. Ask what story is trying to be told through you. Maybe it's the grief of a silenced mother, the unwept tears of a father who was taught never to cry, the trauma of an ancestor who lived through war or exile. These echoes are not illusions. They're sacred fragments of the human soul, asking to be held, acknowledged, and released. Jung believed in the power of facing the shadow of those buried aspects of psyche that hold the key to freedom. And when you honor your emotional reactions, Even when they seem irrational, you are turning toward the shadow with love, not fear. This is how you begin to alchemize pain into purpose. So the next time you feel an ancient sadness rising up, remember it might not be just yours, but it's yours to transform. You are not just healing for yourself. You are healing backwards and forwards through time. You are the threshold where suffering ends and sacred remembrance begins. This is what it means to close a cycle, not by force, not by denial, but by honoring the soul's subtle language through emotion, through intuition, through resonance. Carl Jung didn't just map the unconscious, he illuminated the path toward wholeness. And every tear you shed for a story unspoken is a step on that sacred journey. Have you ever felt emotions from stories you never lived, as if they were your own? If so, share your experience in the comments so others can connect. If not, comment, "I will listen," and let's explore this sacred inheritance together. 3. Feeling different or misunderstood. You've always known there was something different about you, not in an arrogant or dramatic way, but in the quiet, subtle knowing that your soul didn't quite move at the same rhythm as those around you. Even in rooms full of warmth, even in the embrace of love, you felt like a distant observer, as if you were tuned into a deeper frequency that no one else could hear. From a young age, you sensed things that others brushed off: a sudden shift in energy, a buried emotion, a truth behind the silence. While the world around you seemed content to follow inherited scripts, something in you refused to play along. You weren't being rebellious for the sake of rebellion. You were awakening to something ancient in your spirit, something that whispered, "This isn't yours to carry. This ends with you." According to Carl Jung, this quiet rebellion against the unconscious pull of the collective is called individuation, the spiritual process of becoming whole by breaking away from inherited identities, social masks, and ancestral patterns. You were not born to conform. You were born to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to heal bravely. When you feel like an outsider, it's not because you're flawed, it's because you're forged for a sacred purpose. Your soul did not come here to fit into a cycle, it came to close it. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You are the one who stops calling it fate. You are the one who finally sees the invisible strings, the generational beliefs, the unspoken traumas, the inherited guilt, and dares to untangle them. And yet, this role is not glamorous. It is often lonely, exhausting, and misunderstood. But it is also profoundly spiritual, because through your awareness, cycles dissolve. Through your compassion, healing enters bloodlines. Through your truth, patterns collapse and something new is born. You might question why the weight feels heavier on your shoulders than others. Why are you the one who asks hard questions at family gatherings? The one who walks away from traditions that never felt right? The one who cries over pain that isn't technically yours? But the soul recognizes what the mind cannot explain. That some spirits are sent not just to live, but to remember, to unravel, and to restore what was lost generations ago. Your spiritual sensitivity is not an accident. It is the evidence that you were chosen by something greater, something divine, to rewrite the emotional DNA of your family line. What felt like alienation is actually initiation, and what once felt like exile is sacred preparation. So, if you've spent your life feeling different, Don't numb it. Don't hide it. Don't wish it away. That difference is your map. It's how your soul speaks. It's how the universe lets you know. You are not here to repeat. You are here to redeem. You are not broken. You are breaking cycles. You are not lost. You are leading your lineage home. And even if no one claps for you, even if no one understands the spiritual labor of being the first to feel it all, you must continue. Because somewhere in your bones, your ancestors are whispering, "Thank you." 4. Understanding your choices impact generations. You begin to realize that your healing is no longer just a personal journey. It's a spiritual assignment given to your soul, one that reaches across generations like roots spreading through sacred soil. The boundaries you now have the strength to set, the painful truths you finally speak aloud, the heavy ancestral patterns you choose to stop repeating. These are not isolated acts of self-help. They are acts of soul liberation. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious of the individual is inseparable from the collective, and in that realization, your decisions gain cosmic weight. You are not just healing your own trauma. You are rewriting the emotional code of your entire bloodline. Every time you choose love over fear, clarity over confusion, and truth over suppression, you are offering a blessing not only to yourself, but to those who came before and those who will come after. When you stop participating in cycles that have plagued your family for decades, cycles of silence, addiction, betrayal, or emotional abandonment, you become the first link in a new chain. You are not being dramatic or rebellious. You are being divinely responsible. Your soul has decided it's time to interrupt the rhythm of dysfunction with the heartbeat of consciousness. This isn't about blame. It's about recognition, about understanding that the same patterns that hurt you once also shaped your parents and grandparents. You choose to no longer be a silent participant in inherited suffering. You choose to become the sacred disruptor. And through that disruption, something miraculous happens. Healing becomes collective. Like a ripple in water, your healing creates a frequency shift that reaches relatives you've never met and descendants you'll never see. To live authentically in the face of centuries of suppression is a holy rebellion. You start to see your daily decisions as rituals, your voice as sacred, and your emotional clarity as a beacon for others still trapped in the fog. When you say no, you're not rejecting love. You're demanding a higher form of it. When you walk away, you're not abandoning your past. You're honoring your future. The courage it takes to do this cannot be overstated. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But you are no longer living on autopilot. You are turning fate into choice, pain into wisdom, shame into strength. And as your soul awakens, so does your responsibility to live with intention, with compassion, and with spiritual integrity. In this process, even your stillness becomes powerful. The moments when you pause to breathe instead of react, when you sit with discomfort instead of numbing it, these are sacred moments of soul alchemy. You begin to sense that the universe is not just watching, it is co-creating with you. Your inner transformation becomes a map for others, even if they never thank you or understand you. That doesn't matter. The soul does not work for applause. It works for alignment. You become a living prayer. And while the world may never fully know what you've overcome, your energy will speak louder than words ever could. Your ancestors feel it. The future feels it. And most importantly, your soul feels it. Subscribe to our channel and join a community committed to conscious living and generational healing. Here, we share wisdom that empowers you to break cycles, live authentically, and create ripples of transformation across time. Remember, your healing is a gift not just to yourself, but to every soul connected to you. 5. The urge to cleanse emotionally and spiritually. When Carl Jung spoke of the individuation process, he wasn't referring to something abstract or intellectual. It was, at its core, a spiritual cleansing of the soul. One of the deepest signs that you're closing a karmic or emotional cycle is this overwhelming urge to let go, not just of the physical clutter in your environment, but of the internal baggage that has quietly shaped your identity. Suddenly, objects around you seem to hum with old energies. The photo albums, the keepsakes, the clothing tucked away in the back of your closet, each item whispers a memory, a role you once played, a chapter you've outgrown. But the deeper cleansing begins when you realize that it's not just your closet that needs organizing. It's your beliefs, your emotional contracts, your inherited patterns that no longer reflect who you've become. You begin asking, does this still align with the person I'm becoming? And that question, though simple, initiates a profound spiritual rebirth. You're not decluttering out of frustration or boredom. You're not purging to impress or to perfect. You're cleansing to free your soul from narratives that were never truly yours. You may find yourself releasing friendships that once made you feel seen, but now feel constricting. You may stop entertaining conversations that drain your energy, or pull away from family dynamics that keep you entangled in guilt, shame, or obligation. You're no longer available for roles that were assigned to you before you had the wisdom to choose for yourself. You realize that honoring your ancestors doesn't mean repeating their mistakes. It means healing what they couldn't and choosing a new way forward with clarity, compassion, and consciousness. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And this choosing the conscious release of emotional debris isn't an act of rebellion. It's an act of sacred reverence. You are honoring your past by refusing to be imprisoned by it. You are finally strong enough to let it go, not because it meant nothing, but because you've learned everything you were meant to learn from it. I once heard a story about a man who, after decades of chasing approval and clinging to his image of success, suddenly gave away nearly everything he owned. He wasn't running away. He wasn't trying to escape responsibility. He was answering a deeper call within a quiet voice that whispered, "It's time to come home to yourself." With every item he released, he felt lighter, clearer, more whole. It wasn't about the things, it was about reclaiming the energy they held and returning it to the soul. And that is the essence of what Carl Jung understood so well. True transformation is never about acquiring more. It's about removing what is false so what is real can emerge. As you continue this spiritual journey, you will notice that the more space you create internally and externally, the more clarity begins to flow into your life. Opportunities align. Relationships deepen or dissolve with grace. Silence becomes nourishing instead of frightening. You begin to feel your soul speaking not through noise, but through peace. And it is in this stillness that you finally recognize the difference between what you were conditioned to carry and what your soul came here to carry. So trust the cleansing. Trust the urge to let go. Trust the sacred discomfort of releasing what once felt necessary. Because when you do, you're not just closing a cycle, you're stepping into the most authentic, unburdened, radiant version of yourself that your soul always knew was waiting. 6. Keeping your heart open after pain. Despite the betrayal that cracked the foundation of your trust, the rejection that pierced through your confidence, and the abandonment that echoed in the silent corners of your soul, you have chosen the path that few dare to walk, and you kept your heart open. This isn't weakness. It's spiritual power in its most radiant, defiant form. You didn't shut down. You didn't turn cold. You didn't let the pain calcify your soul. Instead, you stood in the fire and allowed it to melt away everything false. Carl Jung said, "What is not transformed is repeated." And in your decision to remain soft, to feel deeply, and to continue loving in the face of heartbreak, you became the alchemist of your bloodline. You are breaking patterns not by screaming into the void, but by refusing to replicate the silence, the emotional withdrawal, and the bitterness that shaped so many before you. You tremble, but you don't retreat. You cry, but you don't shut down. You feel everything, and through that sacred willingness, you restore something ancient and forgotten in your lineage, the right to be whole. The world teaches us to armor up. It says, don't feel too much, don't love too hard, don't let them see you break. But spiritual truth whispers something far more courageous. Stay open, stay tender, stay human. And you listened. You allowed yourself to feel the sting of truth and still chose not to let it define your future. That's not just healing. That's rewriting the very language of your soul. Where others turned to stone, you turned to breath. Where others chose silence, you chose presence. Where others gave up on love, you decided that genuine, soul-deep, self-honoring love is still worth believing in. And this decision didn't come from some dreamy optimism. It came from spiritual maturity. Because only someone who has touched the depth of their pain can choose compassion over revenge, softness over cynicism, and wisdom over reaction. And it's in this space, this sacred tension between heartbreak and hope, where your true transformation begins. You are not just healing yourself. You are healing every woman who was told she had to toughen up to be respected. Every man who was taught that emotion was weakness. Every child who swallowed their truth to keep the peace. You carry their stories in your nervous system, and with every breath you take in self-respect, in forgiveness, in emotional presence, you give those stories a different ending. This is spiritual courage, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but changes everything. You don't need to shout to be heard by the universe. It sees the quiet revolutions. It sees the nights you chose prayer over panic. It sees the days you felt hollow, but still chose to show up with grace. That's what makes you a cycle breaker. That's what makes you powerful. In a world addicted to speed, to distractions, to pretending your ability to pause, to feel, and to stay present is a revolution. So no, you're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not naive. You are spiritually awake. You are the soul that came not to repeat the story, but to complete it. And the completion happens not in noise, not in vengeance, not in resistance, but in the silent, holy act of choosing to stay open, even when it hurts. That is how the cycle ends. That is how the soul remembers its power. That is how true transformation begins. Leave your like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful content like this. Keep walking your path of love and strength. Type in the comments, "I choose to keep my heart open." Thank you for taking this journey with us. As you reflect on these 6 signs, remember that closing cycles is not about endings. It's about sacred beginnings. Trust that what no longer serves you is making space for what your soul truly needs. If this message resonated with you, please like the video, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights that guide you toward transformation and spiritual growth. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Your path to wholeness continues one conscious step at a time. 8 subtle signs someone secretly hates you. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we uncover the hidden truths shaping your emotional and spiritual reality. Have you ever sensed that someone close to you is wearing a mask, saying the right words, smiling in your face, yet something inside you whispers that their energy tells a different story? In today's video, we'll explore 8 subtle but powerful signs that someone may secretly harbor resentment or hostility, even while pretending to be your friend. These insights come straight from Carl Jung's profound shadow psychology and will help you protect your peace, strengthen your intuition, and grow wiser in your relationships. As you listen, reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever felt this, but didn't know why? Comment below with "I trust my intuition" if you're ready to see through the masks and walk in greater spiritual clarity. 1. Contempt disguised as irony. Have you ever laughed along with someone only to feel a sting inside your chest moments later? A quiet ache you couldn't name, but one that lingered long after the conversation ended. Sometimes, what's dressed up as humor is actually something far darker. Contempt disguised as irony. Carl Jung taught that what we repress doesn't disappear. It slips out through the cracks in disguise, projected onto others, often without awareness. And one of the most common ways this projection shows up is through sarcasm, jokes, and backhanded compliments aimed directly at the soul of who you are. These people will smile as they stab, cloak hostility in humor, and then accuse you of being too sensitive when you finally speak up. This is not harmless teasing. This is shadow play. When someone frequently targets your insecurities under the guise of humor, it's a reflection of their own hidden wounds, unresolved envy, or inferiority energies too painful for them to admit, so they cast them onto you in a socially acceptable way. Jung called this projection a psychological defense mechanism that allows people to dump their unconscious emotions onto others. And in this case, they weaponize words while maintaining the appearance of friendliness. That's what makes it so confusing, so emotionally draining. You're left questioning yourself, wondering if you overreacted, when in fact, your intuition picked up on something very real. Sarcasm that leaves you feeling small, jokes that highlight your failures, and constant teasing that chips away at your self-worth are not signs of camaraderie. they are red flags. These subtle assaults may not leave bruises on the body, but they bruise the soul, and over time, they erode trust and connection. And when you confront this behavior, they rarely take responsibility. Instead, they pivot, deflect, or accuse. "I was only kidding," they'll say. Or worse, "You're just too emotional." This is gaslighting, a manipulation tactic designed to make you question your reality and silence your truth. But Carl Jung reminds us that our soul always knows. It knows when something feels off, even when the surface looks fine. Your discomfort is your guidance. Your hurt is not a weakness, it's a signal. And when you listen to that signal, you reclaim your power. You stop tolerating spiritual microaggressions that eat away at your self-esteem and start honoring your boundaries, your worth, and your emotional truth. These experiences aren't just psychological, they're deeply spiritual. Because when someone's shadow attacks your light, it's not a random act. It's a clash of frequencies. It's one soul reacting to the presence of another that reflects back their own fragmentation. So the next time someone makes you the butt of their jokes, pay attention not just to what they say, but to how your soul responds. Does your body tense? Does your spirit shrink? That's not a coincidence. It's a message. You are not here to be anyone's emotional dumpster or unconscious target. You are here to live in alignment with your soul's truth. And that means recognizing when love is false, even when it smiles. Because true connection doesn't humiliate, it uplifts. It doesn't provoke pain, it fosters safety. Your soul deserves nothing less. If you've ever felt the sting behind someone's joke, you're not alone. Carl Jung taught us that what people project often reveals more about them than it does about us. Comment, "I agree," if you've experienced sarcasm used as a mask for contempt, or "I don't think so." If you see it differently, we'd love to hear your perspective. 2. Subtle sabotage. They undermine you in ways so quiet, so cleverly disguised, that you question your own instincts, like when they conveniently forget to pass on crucial information, or give you advice that somehow always leads to confusion, delay, or failure. And just when you're about to rise, when that opportunity finally appears, or you're on the verge of achieving something important, here comes the complication, the mix-up, the emotional detour they help create. You wonder if it's bad luck, or maybe they're just overwhelmed. But when it keeps happening, a deeper truth starts to emerge. Carl Jung called this the manifestation of the shadow, the hidden, repressed part of the psyche that contains jealousy, insecurity, and unresolved wounds. When someone hasn't integrated their shadow, they often sabotage others, not out of malice, but because your growth threatens their carefully constructed identity. If your soul shines too brightly, it makes them feel the weight of their own unlived potential. They might not even realize they're doing it after all. The shadow works in secret, but you feel it. In the moment, they call your dream unrealistic, or offer support that's laced with hesitation, or celebrate you in public while sowing doubt in private. It happens at work, when a colleague leaves you out of an important email chain and later says, "Oh, I assumed you knew." It happens in friendships, when someone gives you bad advice and then watches from the sidelines as you struggle, offering comfort but never accountability. It happens in love, when a partner cheers for your ambition but subtly pulls away each time you get closer to your purpose. It's not the loud betrayal that wounds the soul. It's the 1,000 small acts of disguised resistance. Carl Jung warned that what we do not bring to consciousness will rule our lives. That includes the unconscious intentions of others. And if you ignore those subtle patterns long enough, your energy begins to fracture under the weight of constant second-guessing. The story many of us live is this. We begin to awaken, to speak our truth, to step into the life we feel called to lead. And instead of being met with celebration, we are met with silence, avoidance, and invisible walls. That's because your evolution triggers what others haven't healed. And their shadow wants one thing to bring you back to where it feels safe. But your soul didn't come here to play small. It came to remember. So you must learn to recognize the difference between someone who truly supports you and someone who only tolerates your light when it doesn't shine too far beyond theirs. Watch how they respond to your confidence, your boundaries, your peace. Because the ones who carry hidden envy will sabotage you in smiles. They will clap for your wins with one hand while plotting your doubt with the other. This isn't about paranoia. It's about self-respect. Trust the patterns, not just the words. Because when someone consistently causes confusion, delays your growth, or makes you feel smaller in their presence, it's not love, it's a shadow war. And the greatest act of spiritual strength is not confrontation, but clarity. You are not here to dim your light to protect someone else's insecurity. You are here to rise. As Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Let this truth awaken you not to bitterness, but to boundaries. Not to suspicion, but to soul wisdom. Have you ever felt like someone was quietly working against you, subtly making things harder, without ever admitting it? If you've experienced this kind of sabotage, comment yes. If not, comment no. And if you're unsure, or it only happens sometimes, type sometimes below. Let's see how many of us have felt this hidden tension. 3. Silent competition. They smile when you share good news, but somehow you feel smaller afterward. You tell them about your promotion, and they respond with a bigger one. You mention your new car, and they talk about theirs being more expensive, faster, or rare. At first, you may brush it off as coincidence, but if you look closely, you'll begin to notice a pattern. They can't genuinely celebrate you unless they feel like they've surpassed you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And this truth cuts to the heart of silent competition. According to Jung's shadow psychology, this need to constantly one-up others is often not a sign of confidence, but a desperate attempt to mask a spiritual wound, a feeling of deep inadequacy that has been buried and never healed. These individuals unconsciously project their inner inferiority onto you, turning every interaction into a subtle contest that you never agreed to enter. What makes this even more confusing is that they often appear supportive on the surface. They might clap for you, but there's tension in the air, a strange energy that leaves you second-guessing your joy. They'll give you a compliment, but somehow twist the conversation to center themselves, reclaiming the spotlight in ways that are hard to call out without sounding petty. This behavior is often rooted in the fear of being invisible, of not mattering unless they're the best in the room. In spiritual terms, it's a form of ego possession, a shadow-driven defense mechanism that keeps them from facing their own sense of not being enough. They believe your success reflects their failure rather than recognizing that two souls can shine simultaneously. And if you've ever tried to dim your own light to make them feel more comfortable, you already know the high cost of staying connected to someone who's quietly competing with you. It becomes exhausting, draining your energy and dimming your spirit over time. Spiritually conscious relationships, on the other hand, celebrate mutual growth and expansion. There's no scoreboard, only genuine support. In a world where appearances often mask deeper truths, recognizing silent competition is not just about protecting your peace. It's about awakening to the subtle ways spiritual envy can hide behind fake smiles and polite applause. The goal isn't to confront or accuse, but to become more aware of the energies you allow into your space. As Jung reminds us, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. So look inward, trust your intuition, and honor your soul's need for authentic connection. Because when someone is silently competing with you, they're not just diminishing your light, they're revealing how disconnected they are from their own. And your awareness of this isn't judgment, it's spiritual self-protection. 4. Superficial support. They say they support you, but their energy tells another story. A story of absence wrapped in politeness, of distance masked by smiles. Their words might be sweet, even congratulatory, but when life gets heavy or your soul shines too brightly, they vanish or fall silent. You feel it in their presence, cold, disconnected, indifferent, like they're physically with you, but emotionally somewhere else. Carl Jung called this kind of emotional detachment ego dissociation, where a person becomes so disconnected from their own emotions that they lose the capacity for authentic connection. When someone cannot access their own soul, when they've buried their true feelings beneath layers of ego, shame, or comparison, they also become unable to meet yours with genuine warmth. So instead of celebrating your growth, they offer shallow validation that feels scripted, almost robotic. It's not always what they say, it's what they withhold. The lack of eye contact, the delayed response to your joy, the subtle shift in tone when you talk about something meaningful. These are not coincidences. They are signals from the unconscious, clues from the shadow that Jung said holds all the parts of ourselves we repress: jealousy, envy, inadequacy, fear. And when your soul glows with clarity and peace, it threatens those who are still avoiding their own shadows. Your light exposes their darkness, not because you intend to, but because truth reveals what is false. So they retreat, emotionally and spiritually, offering you only a diluted version of friendship, one that looks real but feels empty. This isn't about drama or overanalyzing every interaction. It's about honoring your soul's intelligence, that soft discomfort in your gut, that inner whisper saying something is off that is wisdom. Energy always speaks first. Words follow, but the soul feels the truth before the mind can explain it. The most dangerous form of pretense is not hatred, it's false support. Because it confuses the heart, makes you doubt your own perception, and can leave you spiritually exhausted. So pay attention to what is said and unsaid. Look beyond gestures and ask yourself, does their presence nourish or drain me? Do they show up when it matters or only when it benefits them? The soul doesn't lie. And when you trust it, You free yourself from illusions disguised as kindness, from approval that lacks depth, and from connections that look safe but are spiritually hollow. You deserve relationships that move beyond the surface, that feel like home, that breathe life into your being, not those that make your spirit question its worth. If you've ever felt the sting of empty words and distant energy, you're not alone. If this message speaks to your soul, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Your path to emotional clarity and deeper spiritual connection grows with every insight we share. 5. Control, disguised as concern. They won't yell. They won't openly criticize. Instead, they'll wrap their control in the softness of concern, slipping manipulation into the tone of care and calling it love. "I'm just looking out for you," they'll say. "I care about your future. That's why I'm asking." But somehow, every time you speak with them, you leave feeling smaller, second-guessing your decisions, wondering if maybe they're right and you're not ready. What they're really doing is projecting their fear onto your freedom. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that holds our deepest fears, insecurities, and suppressed emotions. And when someone hasn't dealt with their own chaos, they'll unconsciously try to regulate yours. Your courage threatens their comfort. Your clarity disrupts their illusion of control. And so they use concern as a leash, subtly tugging you back when you try to run toward your truth. I remember the story of a woman named Sarah who had spent years in a soul-draining corporate job. One day, she finally decided to break free and open her own yoga and wellness studio. It wasn't just a career change, it was a spiritual awakening, a return to herself. But instead of celebration, her closest friend began offering constant advice. "Are you sure this isn't too risky? What if the economy crashes? What if you're not cut out for this?" It was never outright disapproval, just a steady stream of doubt disguised as love. Over time, Sarah realized that her friend wasn't trying to protect her. She was trying to keep her from leaving the shared space of limitation they both once occupied. Sarah's leap forced her friend to confront her own stagnation, and that was too uncomfortable. As Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Her friend was not reacting to Sarah's actions. She was reacting to the parts of herself she hadn't yet owned. This is what makes disguised control so dangerous. It doesn't sound like manipulation. It sounds like care. But true concern never tries to limit you. True love doesn't come with strings or subtle punishments. When someone is genuinely concerned for your soul, they offer support, not surveillance. They celebrate your evolution, even when it changes the dynamic. They don't try to pull you back into who you used to be just because they're afraid of who you're becoming. So the next time someone questions your path under the banner of just helping, take a breath and listen beyond their words. Ask yourself, are they actually supporting my growth, or are they trying to control it? Carl Jung taught us that once we become aware of the unconscious, we take back the power to choose how we respond. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. You simply need to recognize when someone's fear is trying to disguise itself as your truth. And then you choose your soul. You move forward anyway. You honor your vision, even when others can't see it, because their inability to deal with their shadow is not your burden to carry. The more spiritually aligned you become, the more you'll notice this pattern. The people who truly love you will stand beside your fire, even if it makes them sweat. The ones who don't will try to smother it under the weight of their disguised fears. But that's not your path to walk. Your path is forward, lit by clarity, moved by purpose, and guided by your soul, not by someone else's shadow. 6. Gossip and distortion. One of the most insidious signs that someone is pretending to like you is not what they say to your face, but what they whisper behind your back. Instead of having the courage to confront you directly, they choose the path of spiritual cowardice, gossip, distortion, and calculated silence. They magnify your smallest flaws, twist your words, and turn your human moments into exaggerated stories for an audience hungry for drama. You begin to notice it not through confrontation, but through cold shoulders, subtle avoidance, and the way conversations fall silent when you enter the room. Carl Jung taught that what people project onto others often reveals the parts of themselves they are too ashamed to acknowledge. Shame is a soul-eating emotion, he said, and these people, driven by shame and jealousy, can't handle the brightness of your spiritual presence. So they smear your name in the dark, hoping to dim your light without ever being seen holding the match. And here's the spiritual irony. They often disguise this sabotage as concern. "I'm just worried about them," they say with a smirk. But true concern doesn't poison reputations or isolate souls. Real care is confronted with compassion, not whispers laced with venom. Their words don't just damage your image, they attempt to fracture your energy. This is more than social sabotage. It's energetic manipulation. Your soul begins to feel it before your mind can explain it. You feel tension in the spaces they've spoken in, even when they smile at you. You sense hesitation in the eyes of mutual friends. And it's not in your head, it's in the field. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is exactly what happens when people are controlled by their own shadows. They cannot love you genuinely because your authenticity mirrors their own lack of it. Your presence demands truth, and that terrifies those who live in illusion. But there is a spiritual gift buried in this discomfort. It sharpens your discernment. It deepens your solitude into strength. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing clarity from those who only offer confusion. And most importantly, you stop doubting the truth your soul already knows. People who can be turned against you by gossip were never truly with you. Those who distance themselves without asking for your side of the story have shown you their level of loyalty. And those who can only see you through the fog of someone else's distortion were never seeing you at all. What they fear is not your mistakes, it's your presence, your peace, your refusal to shrink. So trust the silence, honor the shift, and let their whispers be the soundtrack of your rising, not the anchor to your identity. Are you ready to rise above the noise and reclaim your truth? If so, comment below, "I choose clarity," to affirm your commitment to spiritual growth and inner peace. 7. No joy in your joy. They say they're happy for you, but when you look closely, really closely, you'll notice something's missing. That genuine spark in their eyes, that heartfelt tone in their voice, it's not there. The words might sound right, but the energy doesn't lie. You share your achievement, a joyful win that came from your soul's hard work and growth, and suddenly the air gets heavy. Their smile is polite but stiff, their response delayed or quickly redirected. Maybe they change the subject, give a half-hearted nice, or toss in a veiled jab disguised as humor. Must be nice to have all that free time. And you feel it, that silent disappointment you weren't supposed to notice. Carl Jung taught us that the shadow of those unconscious parts of the psyche we deny often holds resentment, envy, and unresolved pain. When someone cannot celebrate your joy, it's not about you. It's about the inner battle they're losing with their own shadow. Your success triggers something buried inside them, a dormant wound that whispers, "Why not me?" Your elevation reminds them of their perceived failures. And instead of facing that truth with courage, they deflect it onto you, withdrawing emotionally or responding with false enthusiasm. This isn't just a lack of support. It's a reflection of a fractured soul still entangled in unhealed stories. And if you're spiritually aware, you'll feel this dissonance immediately. Because the soul is sensitive to vibration. And when someone's energy doesn't align with their words, you'll sense it before you understand it. That tension isn't your imagination. It's your intuition speaking. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But in this case, it also reveals something about their inability to hold space for your light without dimming it through passive detachment. This kind of hidden resistance is dangerous because it masks itself in civility. It's not an overt attack, it's spiritual sabotage wrapped in silence. And the most painful part? It often comes from people you thought would be proud of you. But you must remember, your soul did not come here to stay small for the sake of someone else's comfort. Your joy is divine. It is the external echo of internal alignment, the evidence that you've done the inner work to rise. And if that rise unsettles those around you, let it. Do not trade your light for their approval. Do not shrink to keep someone else from confronting their shadow. Instead, bless them silently and keep rising. Because the soul that cannot celebrate you is the one secretly competing with you. And you were never meant to be in a competition. You were meant to shine unapologetically. 8. Nonverbal betrayal. Have you ever shared something beautiful about your life? A moment of success, a joyful milestone, or a well-earned victory only to be met with a smile that didn't quite reach their eyes, or a silence that felt colder than any rejection? You sensed it instantly, not with logic, but with something deeper, something ancient in your soul. Carl Jung once said, "The unconscious always leaks through," and it does especially in the stillness between words and the stiffness between gestures. Someone who pretends to be happy for you might say all the right things, but their body tells a different story. A fake smile, a distant look, an oddly timed pause, or a hug that feels more like a goodbye than congratulations. These are not random. They are the shadow leaking out, the part of them that their ego tries to keep hidden, but your intuition catches in an instant. That cold glance they throw when others praise you, the tightness in their posture when you succeed, the way their eyes shift when you walk into the room glowing. They may not say it, but their soul is broadcasting it. Resentment, envy, and subtle hostility dressed in politeness. And in today's world, where so much is filtered, edited, and masked by performance. This kind of emotional dissonance is more common than we'd like to admit. You begin to realize that the shadow isn't always about cruelty or malice. It's about unacknowledged pain, jealousy, or fear that others haven't yet faced. You become a mirror, and your light disturbs what they've buried. A woman I once knew worked in a creative field where collaboration was supposed to be everything. She thrived, she rose, and her ideas were celebrated. But every time she spoke in meetings, one colleague would look away, blink excessively, or fold their arms tightly across their chest. It was subtle, never loud, never confrontational, but it was real. And that energy, unspoken yet undeniable, told her the truth long before words ever did. This is the nature of shadow behavior. People don't always know they're doing it. They may think they're being supportive, kind, or professional, but your soul knows. You feel the tight energy, the sharp micro-reactions, the misalignment between their words and their presence. And the more spiritually attuned you become, the more you will sense these betrayals not to judge, but to protect your peace. Because not everyone who claps for you actually wants you to win. Not everyone who sits at your table is truly celebrating your feast. Some are just waiting for you to trip so they can sip their envy in silence. The lesson is not to grow bitter, but wiser. Carl Jung's work reminds us that the greatest mastery lies in seeing the shadow hours and theirs, and responding with clarity, not confusion. When you honor your intuition, you're no longer gaslighting your own soul. You stop telling yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, and start saying, my spirit knows what it feels. And that changes everything. Because in a world where so much is fake, your ability to discern real from pretend becomes your greatest spiritual compass. So pay attention to the body language, to the tension behind the tone, to the emotional undercurrents behind the praise. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. If you've ever sensed someone's true feelings through their body language, type in the comments, "My intuition sees the truth." Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden signs of shadow behavior and false friendship. If this message helped you see certain people more clearly or brought awareness to your own energy, remember, you're not alone on this journey of spiritual awakening and emotional clarity. At Spiritual Wisdom, we're here to guide you through the unseen layers of human psychology and soul growth. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need this insight, and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the truth behind the mask in our upcoming videos. Stay wise, stay protected, and keep walking the path of self-awareness.